Thank you very much. It's nice to see you, Paul. It's been a little while since we last properly caught up and spoke. How's things been, man? You well?
I'm well. You're right, Gareth. It's been a while. I think last time I saw you face to face, we were traipsing around Glasgow trying to find the next bar to go to that does Jack Daniels and Coke. So yeah, it's been a long,
which,
long
which
time.
is everyone, so we went to most of them, didn't we?
It was the tour, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Always, it's important you see the sights of Glasgow. That's the ones on that mainly know are the boozers, obviously. But no, look, thank you for making the time. I know you are an incredibly busy man, so I appreciate it. But for those that don't know who you are yet, can you give us a kind of brief introduction, please?
So Paul Nolan, I run a small training business called Penguin Learning Limited for the last 14 years. In-house team of 4, subcontractor population of 5, and we do lots of behavioural assessments and we do management and leadership programs, whether it be bespoke or levy-funded programs. That's kind of our bag, really.
Nice. And it's interesting when you say small, but I'm just going to run off a couple of your clients if you don't mind. So you've got
Okay.
Virgin, Ralph Lauren, Taylor Wimpey, NHS.
Yeah.
What three words? The list kind of goes on with some of these massive brands that you work with and you've worked with actually for a number of years. So it's certainly amazing. And also actually probably the most important and interesting brand you've probably ever worked with is ORRJO as well. So
Absolutely.
you've come up to Glasgow and run training with the team and myself and the team absolutely love it. And certainly the plan is to get you back up here and do more, not just out on the beers, but we'll try and fit in some training as well along that. But usually the kind of format that we run here on Unscripted is kind of going a little bit further back, so kind of before the career. So can you walk us through how you found time at school, higher education? Talk me through it. I'd love to hear some more.
Okay, well, we're going nice and deep kind of straight away here. So probably worth kind of noting at this point, I was an army brat. So my dad was ex-forces. I spent a lot of time in lots of different countries. So I was in Belfast in the 80s, a very interesting time. Lived in Germany
Mm.
for a number of years, and a little stint in Hong Kong before coming back to the UK when I was 11. So I probably changed schools during primary schools every like 2 or 3 years. So very much redeployed, make friends, move, redeploy, kind of make friends. And I kind of settled at a place called Sittingbourne in Kent in 1994, I think it was, and went to a school called Falston Manor. I didn't mind education. I thought I didn't mind learning certain subjects. So quite happy with things like maths, for example. English wasn't my strongest kind of subject. Um, did okay at the grades, but I found school was about understanding like social groups, understanding who people were and kind of what made people tick. And I found it very interesting working like with certain teachers where I'd be on the sports team because I was doing really well at sports at school. I would then skip certain detentions because the PE teacher would say, look, you can't really get a detention for home economics for not making an omelette. You really need him to go and play right wing, kind of this particular kind of team. So I found school a really interesting time where understanding people, understanding that it wasn't really linear, kind of either, kind of the way the world worked. So yeah, interesting from a life experience. Education wise, I think I finished with like 4 Bs and 4 Cs, and I got an A star in RE only because I copied the kid next to me who'd studied really, really hard. So sorry about that.
I was going to ask you how you did. So I mean, did you? I guess did you enjoy it?
Education, yes and no. I enjoyed like the friendships and the relationships and the
Mm.
connections you could form with people. But I struggled at times to really understand how things like trigonometry would help me in the real world. The bit
Yeah.
of a disconnect for me from kind of what was being taught in secondary school versus what I thought I needed when I was in kind of formal employment. So
And you tell me that trigonometry hasn't helped you run a learning and development company. Is that what you're suggesting
it,
for the last 14 years?
I haven't used it recently. I'm sure I could have used it in a number of ways. Um, but things like if I'd been taught like commerciality training, like a P&L sheet, I would have found like how to kind of manage budgets and stuff
Mm.
which would then be translatable to both work and to personal. I think I would have found that even more kind of interesting in those subjects.
Yeah. So a bit
Yeah.
more practical. And did you go to college or university afterwards?
Yep. So I did my A levels, and I bombed
Hmm.
my A levels. I kind of rode the wave of 4 Bs, 4 Cs, and the A star in RE, and thought I'll just breeze through my A levels and have no problems. But when you're 16 to 18 and you're in certain social circles, you kind of branch out into a different direction. Education starts to kind of fall down the list a little bit. And I wasn't
Yeah.
the best studier at that particular age, out too much having way too much fun. So I think I finished my A levels with it was one E and two N's, N being a narrow fail. So A, B, C, D, E, N, and then kind of U was the ungraded. So I went to university with two UCAS points and had to study a foundation year at Anglia Polytechnic in general sciences, I think it was, before then doing a 3-year degree in forensic science with criminology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds actually like probably our journeys were quite. I mean, I regularly failed exams. So I don't think there was. I think there was only one or two I actually passed my whole school life, which is particularly underwhelming. But yeah, it doesn't sound like it was too dissimilar. And when you think about like, obviously, you know, it also sounds like we took similar paths in kind of social circles and probably going out more and partying and stuff where we should have been potentially thinking a bit more about studying for exams or what have you. But hey
Getting
ho,
life skills.
yeah, exactly. Networking. So we were very good at that from an early age, which is great, and probably has served as well, to be fair.
Absolutely.
But thinking about like jobs and stuff. So I know that. I mean, I know we've worked together a long time. I know how hard you work now. Have you always been a grafter?
Yeah, I found I've got a very coming from like a military family. It was a view of you only get out what you put in, so you have to put
Mm,
in a lot to get out. Um, so even when it was kind of working like the weekend boy at like the local NISA equivalent, but back in the day, I would get all the horrible shifts because I just wanted the hours. I wanted to go and earn some money to
mm,
go and socialize and enable me to go and do stuff. So I'd quite happily do the 6 p.m. to 10:30 close and lock up and
mm.
all the shifts that nobody else wanted because I just wanted to be able to have that financial freedom to go and do what I
Yeah.
wanted to go and do. So yeah, happy to put in the hours. And we've got this horrible phrase my dad kind of used on me as a kid, which was probably some PTSD from it, which was half job. So whenever at the
Oh,
top,
really?
like yeah, anything that was not fully completed, he would say, "Why would you why would you start a half job?" So whenever I do something, I go into it guns blazing, 100%.
Mm.
There's no half job that I kind of do when I'm older. Even when it comes to things like painting, decorating stuff around the house, it's either all in or it's nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And what, can you talk me through some? So obviously you worked in kind of like local kind of retail shops and stuff. Any other like part-time jobs or
Oh,
anything particular? Any funny stories you've got?
so the it's kind of one of those sliding door moments. So when I went to university, I lived in halls of residence across the road from the Grafton Centre in Cambridge. So I was around looking for a job, thinking, you know, I'm a student, I need to go and get a job. I've worked in customer facing jobs beforehand, working behind the till, processing sales. I thought, well, I'll just go and give it a go. And the first shop I stumbled across was AllSports back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And
Is that still about? Has that been bought over
oh,
by? Must it
I think they were
JD or
bought
something maybe?
out and kind of gone like
Yeah,
many,
yeah,
many
yeah.
years ago now. So selling trainers was kind of and kind of tennis rackets and stuff like that. Loved that job. That was almost like an elevation to kind of the customer service, sales focus kind of stuff that I do now. But when I went there, it's kind of quite sentimental. This is when I got that job. I was on my first shift, and the person who was on our last shift was a guy called Nick Smith, and I still talk to Nick now, kind of many years later. But Nick left to go work at Orange. Then he got me the job at
Oh,
Orange.
yeah.
Then when he moved to go somewhere else, I kind of went with him. So I think without meeting Nick, and I've never told Nick this story, but without meeting Nick at All Sports, I would never have worked at Orange. If I never worked at Orange, I would never have met my wife. So all of a sudden,
Oh
it's kind of one
wow.
of those moments where if I just worked one day later, all of a sudden I would never have met him. It would have been a completely different trajectory. So all sports was my first job. I loved that. He took me to Orange and I sold mobile phones for like 3 years. Worked with some great people that were there. And then I had the opportunity to move from shop floor retail at Orange into the training team at Orange. Then I moved to the training team at Virgin Media. Then I took the leap and went self-employed 14 years ago now.
And what gave you the confidence to do that?
Do you know? Do you know? There was a particular moment when working at Orange where myself and one of my colleagues, Calm Cooner, kind of I don't keep in contact with him now, but really good guy. We were working in Birmingham, and there was a subcontractor that was there, and me and Calm were talking about jobs and employments and progressing through the corporate kind of route. And this particular subcontractor, I never caught his name, but he turned around the corner in this brand new Audi RS4, and I was like, hold on a second. I'm I'm working like 50, 60 hour weeks doing 30,000 miles a year. I don't have an RS4. So I just started asking him questions and he started talking about day rates and value and kind of how long you'd be doing it kind of for. And immediately I was like, to have control of your own diary, to choose the work that you want to do, but to do that work really, really well and be rewarded
Yeah,
for it, I want to be heading in that direction.
yeah. Nice. No, it's kind of similar to me in terms of the shiny cars. We both
Yeah.
got a thing for them. So, and in terms of that moment though, that 14 plus years ago when you were at Virgin Media and you were like, right, I'm going to, you see the upside, right?
Yeah.
But what was the kind of like, what was going through your mind? I mean, like, were you worried about it? Did you just see the upside and opportunity? Did you consider the what could have happened if it didn't go to quite to plan?
Yeah, I think I saw the upside, but it was almost like blinded enthusiasm to a point where when I went for the job interview at Virgin Media, having met this subcontractor at Orange like 6 months earlier, it was like June the 8th, kind of 2008, I think it was, somewhere around about then.
Mm.
And Mike Fleets, my head of training, interviewed me in Trowbridge kind of back in the day. And he said to me, Paul, what do you want to be doing in 3 years' time? Bearing in mind, I'd known Mike for about 45 minutes. And I said, Mike, in 3 years' time, I'm going to be handing in my notice to go self employed. And
Oh
he found
wow!
that really interesting to be like, right, almost you've got like 3 years of me, and then I'm gone. I'm gonna step out of this and kind of do my own thing.
Wow!
So yeah, it was uh, confidence, arrogance, just I think it was blind enthusiasm to go. I know what I want to do, and I'm putting my stake
Mm.
really firmly in the ground to go. That's a trajectory of travel for me.
And so, look, I get you get the kind of obviously the day rates and the flex you get with kind of running your own diary and stuff. Was that the main driver? Was there anything else in mind? Was there just that desire to work for yourself? What kind of drove you on that?
Yeah, I think I'd always wanted to be like my own boss at some point. My dad was always trying
Mm.
to push me to join the army, but I found that
Right.
structure really restricting and thought, well,
Okay.
I don't like to be in a way kind of told what to do in a particular
Yeah.
style of kind of as the military was kind of back then. So I just almost kind of just pushed away from that as far as I could, which then pushed me towards kind of being like my own boss and my own kind of in control of my own kind of diary. So for me, it was absolutely independence first to allow me to do what I wanted to do. And
Hmm.
with the benefit was I could choose the days and choose the rates I want to operate at as well. And in the beginning for the first 2 years, I took everything, every piece of work that came my way,
Yeah.
whatever day rate it was, just to put some revenue kind of through the door so it could pay
Yeah.
the mortgage, pay the bills. Bearing in mind, this is 2008. So things had just gone kind of wrong in the economy, and
Yeah.
our mortgage was with Northern Rock as well. So
Oh
all of a
fucking
sudden,
hell.
all of a sudden, it was like, wow, I need to get stuff, I need to pay for stuff now at
Mm.
this particular kind of point in time. So it was just, I just had to get it done. But yeah, I think that movement from moving away from the military in that heavily structured environment to kind of being my
Mm.
own boss was the big driver. Then it was secondary of kind of allowing me to kind of work the days that I wanted on the rates that I
Yeah.
wanted to.
And then obviously I kind of went into the from a relatively young age, went into the more kind of corporate world, and I did struggle, I think, with that structure, like not being able to challenge the status quo and stuff. Really, it really wrecked my head. Like when you knew, and even people above you knew that some of the decision making right in the very top wasn't quite, making a lot of sense, but yet it wouldn't be changed, even though an argument was put forward that would change the direction of that stuff. And I don't know, and I want to be careful what I say, but like, I think I don't want to upset anyone, but it's just, it can be a really tough one. And I think probably that's what gave me the confidence and probably knew that I was much more of a leader and not like I was. You would almost kind of go out your way to do the right thing because you'd be kind of trying to lead. You would be, if something was done and it didn't make sense for the people, you would stand up and stand against it. Do you know what I mean? And so, and I know you're very much the same. Like, when did you realize that? Like, did you realize that before you went into working for yourself? Did you know that from a really young age? Like,
No, I think when I moved into the world of like working at Orange and like working in telecoms, all of a sudden you could start to feel there was this political cloud that was kind
mm,
of over what you were doing. Like you wanted to try and provide customers with a product kind of or service that kind of match their particular needs. But you had this drive of, but you need to sell these particular data products in order to kind of hit kind of your commission structure. So it was almost like you're influencing the customer's decision to go and kind of buy products which they kind of may not need. And
Yeah.
even when you got to that kind of role within, like for me, it was as an L&D BP, you're kind of more like a subject matter expert within your kind of role. So why is someone giving me instruction who's never done this job before on how to do this job when I don't tell you how to do your job because I don't know how to do your job? So just leave me to do what I need to go and do. And that's kind of almost pushing back and being challenged. We had a couple of the team, especially at Virgin Media, we were really good and cohesive as a team at kind of pushing back and challenge, which just meant sometimes we not were seen as like the kind of bad crew to be around, but we'd be like, well, but why? Why is training the solution to this problem? And I enjoyed that, but I could see the hassle that it was creating by further the food chain. Again, that kind of cloud of politics of we need to do this and do this and do this. And I didn't really understand the rules of that game or really even want to learn the rules of that game. I just want to do a good job and then kind of do what I need to do and then make sure what I offer is a high quality kind of product, do the best that I can do, then sleep well at night knowing I've done the best that I can do. And I didn't want to get involved in the agendas that were kind of floating around.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing, isn't it? With the bigger the organization, the more people, the more politics, the more drama, the more just chaos there can be. And it's funny, isn't it? Because I remember when I was younger and kind of like try to get on my career, I was like, I really want to work for a massive company. It seemed as like it's such a, I don't know, prestigious thing to almost do. And then you look back now and you're like, fuck hell. Like, and when people ask me for advice now, I'm like, well, but there's lots of upside as well. Like, I want to be really fair about bigger companies. Like, there is great things about working for big companies. We have clients that are big companies, so do you. There is lots of upside. I think for people like us, probably not so much. Just more for our probably mental health as well than anything else.
Just people are just built different. Like as people I've come across in my career who've made it their own career to learn the rules of the game, know when to say something and when not to. And absolutely, if you've got that level of mastery in order to be able to do that and you enjoy it, then you are built for the corporate world. I suppose for me, with that challenge of I don't understand the rules of the game here or want to learn the kind of rules of the game. It just didn't kind of suit me. But again, lots of corporate organizations, the security you get about having like a big logo, big organization, lots of huge kind of benefits, because stepping out to the world self-employed, you've got nothing. You haven't anything you want, you've got to go and create off your own back. If you want private healthcare, you've got to bring in enough revenue to pay for private healthcare. And 100%. It's included kind of within some of the package deals that you get that are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there's and it's just horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
So walk us through a bit more kind of recently then. So, well, I say recently, Penguin started 14 years ago. Can you walk us through that kind of journey to start? Like what did you do to kind of kick off? Did you have a client to start with? Did you start with absolutely nothing? Can you talk us through the first, like, if you remember them, I'm sure you do, but the first few months of Penguin?
Yeah, so the first 3 years are just a series of heavy battle scars. I think anybody that picture of you walk into.
I can't believe you've got no greys, man. Honestly, like
keep my hair short, kind of.
Yeah, fair.
Keeping it short. I think that, the reality is, for me, not everybody has this experience. The first 3 years running your own business are really, really hard. You step out into a world where people knew you in the corporate world, and because I wasn't a head of talent, a HRD. I wasn't at a level where I'd kind of spent enough time in corporate to build connections. So the first few years are quite hard to get revenue kind of off the ground. We were super lucky because it was me and my old manager, a guy called James Coleman-Tai, set up Penguin back in, I think it was like September 2011, for example. And we were lucky where we had James in particular, had some really good connections and just connected us to a program that was running at Eon, doing a data share project. Not our bag, not things I wanted to be involved with, but we thought, right, this just gets us some pennies kind of into the bank. It kind of gets the ball kind of rolling. So we were really lucky to have that first opportunity. But within 6 months, James realised that perhaps kind of self-employed life kind of wasn't for him. He wanted that kind of security, that kind of corporate organisation. He was an absolute 10th Dan black belt at being able to play the political game. He knew how to do it. He knew when to say. He was very, very kind of cool, calm, and collected. And so he went back into a point, and we still keep in contact kind of occasionally kind of on LinkedIn and kind of keeping it kind of on a good note. We did some work from kind of Furniture Land a little while back as well. But because I was then went from having a business partner who could bounce ideas off to having to learn how to go and do the job, to go and build a network, to go and find the work that I needed, but then be able to market, do the accountancy, do invoicing. I had so many lessons kind of when the first year, I remember getting the accountant said to me, right, your corporation tax bill is like $3,000 for like last year. And I'd blown it. I was like,
Yeah, that was
what
the
do you
down
mean?
payment in the new Audi, wasn't it?
What do you mean I've got a bill coming up? And I hadn't, because I
Yeah,
was almost that kind of hand to mouth kind of for the first kind of 2.5, kind of 3 years.
yeah.
I remember I remember having to ring up HMRC and having to go on a payment plan. And the guy
Mm.
was like, right, well, we're going to have to charge interest kind of on this. And it was something crazy. Like if the bill was $3,000, I think the interest I got charged was like £3,200. It was something kind of nominal. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to pay us off at like £500 a month for the next few months while trying to find work to go for. Things like that are the experiences which nobody posts on their Instagram. Kind of
Oh,
that
no,
was
no,
kind of
no.
having to ring up the HMRC kind of, cap in hand and go, look, can you help me kind of out here, for example? And I remember at one point when we had Penguin, we were probably about 18 months in, and a load of work had been pushed from my diary from 6 weeks time to like 12 weeks time. So it meant because I'd banked those dates in my diary, I'd been
Yeah,
pushing other work after that particular program. So I had
yeah,
about an 8-week period where, because of billing cycles and payment terms, no revenue was coming through. And saying to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, to say, look, this month you're going to have to cover the rent this month because I'm not going to be paid enough money. That was almost the conversation to then go, I never want to be in that position again.
yeah,
How
yeah.
can I start to create a system, a business that prevents me from being able to be kind of pay bills on like a conveyor belt, kind of as and when
Mm.
I want to start finding my own clients. And that's
Yeah,
kind of where it just started to trickle through to finding a few clients of our own. I think the first client we had was first big client we had was New Day, who we worked with, I think it was way back in probably kind of 4 or 5 years in. So probably somewhere around about kind of 2016, 2017. And that was recommended through kind of someone within my network.
mm.
And that was the moment where we met our key stakeholder who wanted kind of training. And that's when I had to take on Phil, my brother, because I couldn't manage that account because it was so large and do
Yeah,
all the deliveries. I had to naturally just start building out a team kind of in kind of year 4, year 5, year 6, somewhere around about there.
brilliant.
Yeah.
And in terms of Penguin as it is today or over the last few years, like, can you walk through like where you guys really specialize and the training in particular you love doing?
Yeah, so kind of our sweet spot kind of for people that we love to work with kind of in any organization is those people who are going to be first line managers in the near future, or new kind of first line managers, because that's where you can have real impact, where they go from the contributor role where they're part of a team
Yeah,
into managing quite often a team they were once kind of in. That there is our population where we could just, if we could work with people like that for the rest of our lives, I'd be incredibly happy.
yeah,
Um, Today, Penguin's a slightly kind of different kind of beast. So we used to do lots of ad hoc and bespoke programs, but the trouble with that is you very much go back to that cycle of, paid, unpaid, kind of. It was almost
yeah.
hand to kind of mouth. Feast and famine is a word that kind of describes
Mm.
it. So now we're building relationships to try and create a recurring revenue model where we can predict our revenue for the next 15 to 18 months. And
Yeah,
that's where we
brilliant.
brought kind of ORRJO in to go, right, can you help us to try and find some of those clients who have an appetite kind of for these particular types of programs? And now we're transitioning slowly kind of over to there. I think if we can get the numbers right, maybe 60-70% of our revenue for next year will be recurring revenue. Whereas
Brilliant.
kind of 2 or 3 years ago, it was primarily 100% bespoke and ad hoc.
Mhm. And how do you guys? This is kind of off the cuff, I guess. Like, how do you guys compare to some of your competitors?
Or different specialities for different things. again, when it comes to our
So
competition,
I'm just throwing some grenades in here, Paul. As
I
you know.
love this. It is kind of unscripted here. I think the product we do is really, really good. I think the thing that kind of makes us stand out is the people that are delivering our workshops are kind of deep experts in that particular space. So
Mm.
I've met a few subcontractors and other programs who have been delivering management training, for example, and a learner will ask that particular trainer, okay, so we're talking about having difficult conversations. Can you give me an example of how this would work in practice? And that trainer's gone, whoa, hold on. I'm just a trainer. I've never been a manager before, kind of in my life.
Mm.
And for me, that's a real kind of break in credibility. So I'd never
Hmm.
want that to happen on any of our workshops.
Yeah.
So for us, it's that kind of delivery of service, the tools that we use and the partnerships that we have, and we deliver things in a very interactive way. So there's lots of
Yeah.
storytelling, engagement, facilitation, no PowerPoint. We're designed to get people built into the program that we're trying to go and deliver, so they can take a couple of things away and go, that actually made sense, not just for my work kind of behavior, but also in my personal life as well, to help kind of cement the learning more than just we're delivering communication skills.
Yeah, and I have to say, you've obviously trained. Well, you've trained our whole team, but you've done sessions with the whole team through the disc, which I'm keen to dig into a little bit more there. But in terms of the leadership stuff as well, as we were transitioning our initial contributors into leadership roles, you did a session. Is that a year, 2 years ago, maybe?
Oh
Was
yeah,
that initial one? Was that?
time flies,
Jeez,
Gareth.
that's mad, isn't it? Like, and I think like the team loved it. I mean, like, I've worked with some really great trainers over the years and some really not so great trainers, and the team really enjoyed it. And I think like it wasn't even just because we were doing one, because I knew you, I knew your style, I knew that you got me and what we were trying to build at ORRJO as well. There was just such a nice alignment there. And I think as well, like, because you've done, I think you know this anyway, like the work that you've done obviously with these massive brands, and the fact that they keep getting you coming back. And I remember as well, before we kicked off with you guys, I had a couple of calls with some of your clients just to do a bit of research and digging into like about Penguin, about yourself, and the feedback was just so interesting and obviously really positive. You obviously only set me up with those ones, but I'm joking.
These people.
Yeah, but it was really good, and it was just really insightful because, as I say, like when you're either selling something or you're certainly bringing it into the business, into audio, you know, you want to make sure that the person and the team are going to be engaged, obviously, and that kind of goes without saying. But like, you know, I remember, I think you actually did this session with the whole team when I was on holiday. I think I remember, and I know that I was the butt of a lot of jokes, which was absolutely fine.
You weren't there.
Which is exactly. I probably would still have been even if I was there. But the team loved it, and they walked through all their stuff, and we had the disc assessments and stuff. And can you talk me through a bit there, because I know that you work really closely with those assessments. Like, you know, how's things going there? Are you still enjoying that? Are you still utilising those daily?
Yeah. So, by the way, for the purpose of this podcast, it's the butt of the joke for Gareth was because you weren't there. I was explaining to the group how you could use disc to get a pay rise or a promotion kind of in the right way. And looking at how you're promoting internally, seems to be working kind of quite well in that particular situation.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And as well, were you not using my results to suggest how they can best communicate with me and stuff, which is fair.
absolutely. If you need to challenge Gareth, you need to come to him with solutions, not with problems. There's kind of like a couple of things that can...
100%, and you're absolutely bang on the money there.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
we still do loads of those reports. Our partnership with TTI Success Insights UK is about 10 years old now.
Brilliant.
As a business, we've sold probably about 11,000, maybe 12,000 kind of reports into kind of various businesses of different sizes. I think my debriefs are now up to about 6,500 debriefs, whether it be workshop sessions, kind of team away days. We had conferences where we had 150 people at one time, kind of all talking about kind of disc. But again, in a nice kind of interactive way. But we do a lot of that. I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, the conversation you have has consequences, and that can either be a much more positive consequence of that conversation or a much more kind of negative consequence of that conversation. So understanding what your preferred communication style is will help you to see any oversights you have where your positive intent is I want to have a conversation in a really kind of direct and candid way, so there's no ambiguity about this, could be seen as very aggressive or quite
Mm,
cold. So it's almost just being able to understand the different perception. The rule we always talk about with DISC is there's no right or wrong. It's about communicating messages in a way that others need to hear it, which may be different from how you want to naturally communicate that message.
yeah,
So if providing managers with that sort of skill means that they can look at how they then deliver feedback, or how they then coach, how they do performance reviews, how they challenge a client or stakeholder as an example. So that fits as like a core model that we'll use across all of our workshops.
yeah, nice. No, and the team loved it, and I think it certainly helped myself, but also some of the newer leaders help navigate some of those positive and slightly trickier conversations, which has been super helpful. And obviously with things like COVID and stuff, like you must have seen massive change in your industry. How is it now, like over the last maybe 12, 24 months? How has it changed? Have you seen, is it flipped back to what it was like before COVID? Is it still similar? How's it going?
Oh, I suppose if you look at kind of like before COVID, lots of organizations spending kind of had huge budgets for training, lots of different providers kind of coming in, lots of different things happening, whether it be ad hoc bespoke workshops or
Mm,
quite large programs. Um, COVID moved everything to virtual for us.
mm,
We had a couple of programs that were still successful via virtual delivery, even though our preference is always going to be classroom. Right now, it's definitely a bit of a blend. So as organizations are moving kind of back into the office, kind of on a more kind of part-time basis, we're finding there's more appetite now for classroom training. Um, Whereas there are a couple of people who want to do more kind of virtual workshops because they are a global business, geographically kind of spread across the UK, 100% kind of remote. So it's a bit of a kind of mixed bag. I would say that over the last 18 to 24 months, budgets for L&D have been getting smaller and smaller. So a couple of our organizations have had kind of quite big restructures kind of within their teams, which meant training budgets have been slashed, having to do kind of more with less, which is then why we started developing partnerships with the levy in order to
mm,
access kind of funds
yeah,
to allow people to actually get access to really good training with
yeah, yeah,
qualifications from a pot that you've already paid into,
yeah,
and not being a kind of one person on a cohort with a mixed kind of group. Let's deliver an in-house program
yeah,
branded kind of with behavioral reports like this kind of included, with actors included, with business simulations kind of included. So it's much more enriching rather than the kind of off the shelf kind of program.
yeah. Nice. And obviously, like new leaders or new managers, I think there's like a crazy high stat. It's like 60% of new managers fail or struggle within the first kind of 2 years. Why do you think that is? Like, you've obviously trained thousands of leaders over the years, like or and new managers. Like, why do you think a lot of them get it wrong?
A couple of reasons. I think that you might find that a lot of new managers who are completely new to the role
Mm,
haven't been provided with the skills and knowledge they need to
yeah,
be effective within that particular position. So there's a
yeah,
training need to go on it. You don't know what you don't know. You may have had a manager who also leads a team in a very kind of autocratic way. So you try to role model what you've seen before because they were successful and
mm,
they've moved on. So I'm
yeah,
going to be the
yeah,
same. But that may have lent really well to their behavior. It doesn't lend itself very well
mm,
to yours. So all of a sudden you're kind of mimicking behaviors that don't fit naturally with you. You could then become like the harbinger of doom kind of within that particular team. So
yeah,
and again, you kind of see that where you're almost producing like mini me's kind of versions of kind of what's
yeah,
going on. And the bit that I struggle kind of within some organizations is that's seen as in order to step up, you need to be this particular style. And that kind
mm,
of goes kind of quite kind of high within an organization, and kind of echoes kind of through the ranks. So people that are of that style, whether it be a genuine behavior they demonstrate or kind of almost
mm,
like an act if need be,
yeah,
they
yeah,
get
yeah,
promoted. Whereas others that can bring a much more collaborative, people-centric, customer service kind of focused approach to
yeah.
their team, that servant leadership piece can get overlooked because they don't fit into this mold that
That
seems to
mold,
be
yeah,
kind of echoing kind of through the ranks. So a number of reasons as to why, but for us, it's about how do we equip them with that skills and knowledge, especially when you're moving from a contributor role
Yeah,
into a bit of a blended role where you are manager by title, but also part contributor before
yeah,
you move into that kind of full manager kind of role.
yeah.
That's the skill set we try and plug.
And so, because I think again, like it's something like 82 or 83% of new managers don't get any training whatsoever, like none. Um, so I think you're bang on the money there. That probably people just haven't had that support, that coaching, or which I think is really really important. And I think also as well, I think a lot of people you can almost learn as well what not to do by your previous or other leaders or whatever. So I think it's an interesting consideration. But see if is there any kind of specific advice you'd give to someone, maybe like if they're in their early, maybe mid-20s and they've been superstar in terms of individual contributor, it often leads that they then become the next in line for leadership, which we know is completely different. But at the time, you feel as if that's the path of success and growth and all that. And sometimes it is, but often it's maybe not. And maybe there's not a like training budget or is there anything tactically you would recommend for some of these guys and girls that might be kind of taking their first step into like management from individual contributing?
Yeah, I think if you step away from like education, look at kind of real world, I think the more you get to know your team, that's going to
Yeah,
be the important thing. They understand kind of how they respond to kind of feedback. Some respond really well to negative feedback,
yeah,
others don't respond as well. For some people, it's about work-life balance. It's about opportunity. It's about kind of having that drive to learn and succeed. Some people are really happy just being a contributor, and that's absolutely kind of fine. You might even find that there's people on that team who want to progress into the role that you're kind of now in. And how do you not
yeah.
look at that as a threat, but how do you nurture that so that when you're
Mm,
ready to step up, they can step in? Then the whole
mm,
sequence just starts again. You kind of form that ladder of development. I suppose if you don't have any kind of training budget, there's loads of kind of good kind of books and online kind of
mhm,
tools that you can read. I would definitely look at anything to do with communication, difficult conversations, and have that kind of in the bag, different models that
mhm,
you can use, different ways to deliver kind of feedback. And as a core model, if you're looking at things for us, situational leadership is a really great model, both the diagnostic piece and the
mhm.
flexibility piece, to
Yeah,
provide you with some core kind of tools that will work in a number of situations. So there's a book called The 1 Minute Manager.
yeah.
You can buy off Amazon for like kind of £6. That there is a nice short series of short stories that can
Mhm.
provide you with some core principles that will set you up for success.
Nice. And that interesting thing we had our first podcast actually released was with someone called Nikki, and she's a kind of mindset and kind of business coach, and she talked a lot about investing in yourself and like rather than thinking all about the brand new Audi RS4 or whatever there's or the new trainers or whatever it might be,
Yeah,
right? Which probably you and I would have gone and bought. But
absolutely.
there's also the opportunity though to have that invest that money yourself. So even if your company isn't or maybe just doesn't have the budget, it's not like they don't want to train you. Like, and that's the reality, especially as well for like smaller companies, like ourselves included. It's not like you don't want to give your people everything. But there's only so much you can do at certain points of the journey or whatever it might be. And I think um, I'm a huge believer in people taking control of themselves and being accountable and being responsible for their own and spending their own time developing. It's not about you only come into work between 9 and 5 and that's when you do all your developing. It's like, well, actually, if you go to the gym at night or in the morning or you go for a walk with a dog, you can stick on headphones, listen to a book or a great podcast or whatever, and there's still loads of development opportunity, or even on a Saturday or whenever, really, because at the end of the day, it serves you. It doesn't necessarily. It's not you're not doing it for something. It's not you're doing. If say one of my guys were doing it, it's not like that. Yes, it might have impact to me in the business, but ultimately it's setting them up for huge success in their future, whether it's now or in the longer term. So I'm a huge believer in that. Is there anything but I think people are getting better at that, though. I would say, like, because I think there's more resources online now
Amen.
than there's ever been. Right? Um, is there any podcast you listen to that really help you in the terms of when it comes to like the development piece? Anything that you really like?
Yeah. So there's a couple. I really like Diary of a CEO. I do. I think some of the, especially some of the communication kind of conversations. There's um, an ex FBI kind of lady. I can't remember kind of what her name is. That's really interesting about understanding and reading kind of body language. There's a podcast with a lawyer that's really good about the power of kind of saying no and how to say no as well is really,
Right.
really good. Again, on Diary of CEO. But for things like business, I find there's a particular lady called Cody Sanchez who provides some really interesting insights on how to look at business, look at revenue, how to grow an organization from kind of the ground kind of up. I find her information really interesting to kind of watch because
Nice.
it's just so practical. And it's like, and it's snippets of
Mm.
just absolute gold. Um, I would take what you said and go a step further. Where if you're running out of training budgets within an organization and it's unavailable to you, there's no reason why you can't reach out to try and find yourself an internal mentor, someone who's
Mm.
almost like
Yeah.
10, 15 years ahead,
Great shout.
who's going to give you kind of what you need, so who can shortcut you through some of those 15, 20 years of corporate experience. They
Yeah.
go, I did this, and for God's sake, don't do that. Even that
Yeah.
there is just gold, kind of navigating that more political landscape.
Yeah. And do you know who we recorded with last week? We had Martin Moran on,
Oh
one of my
my
mentors.
gosh.
So yeah. So yeah, and I totally agree. Like he's or any mentor really that you can build a strong relationship with, and be able to ask and share really honest and upfront stuff is invaluable, I think. So yeah, definitely recommend that. How do you recommend people go about that? Like, so if they maybe are kind of early 20s, maybe starting their career, they possibly and probably don't have a network that maybe like you and I have built over the last 15, 20 years. Like, any recommendations there?
Well, I suppose if you're in an organization as an employee and you're looking to progress, just start get the hierarchy of the business and just look near the top and just start asking
Yep.
questions and
Yeah.
say, look, I've joined the organization. I've been here a year. I want to learn more. I want to understand more about how what I do tactically impacts what you do at a strategic level. Is there an opportunity to kind of for some mentoring or even for a coffee, a bit of kind of insight? I'd love to learn, because the salesperson and me as well, the worst thing that can happen is they say no, and you're in exactly the
Yeah.
same position you're in before. Whereas they could
Mm,
just go, absolutely, I've got 10 minutes, 2 weeks on Wednesday. Let's go and find kind of time at kind of 7:50 in the morning, and
yeah.
you go and make that time and form that connection. It's about kind of just having that kind of cadence to meet up regularly enough so it kind of
Yeah.
just becomes part of that kind of routine. So I would, as an employee, if I could go back again, I would definitely kind of look for an internal kind of mentor because there's you've got nothing to lose at this
Mm.
particular point in time. But
And
everything.
interestingly, then, if you're a startup CEO or COO or what have you, or maybe a founder, co-founder, and you're maybe still maybe early or mid 20s or something, like there's lots of those guys around, and girls, and I think like what would you do if you were them? Would you like, and you didn't have a hierarchy to look up to?
Yeah. So what you do is engage with ORRJO, who will widen your influence in market to find yourself in an. But again, I
There we
think
go.
just reeling it in there. I think if you're in that situation where you kind of you're out on a limb in a new space, LinkedIn is a great, well, it's a good platform now. It's not a great platform. It was a
Mm,
great, it's a good platform now to start reaching out and forming those sorts of connections. So look, I'm in the same space as you. Kind of would be good to kind of meet up. You're going to be very careful about the language that you use because you don't want to come
yeah,
across as competition and kind of doing research. So maybe choose some people that are in similar social circles. So you can meet people in a variety of ways. I met a guy when I was going on a stag do in Seville, and me and six guys drinking in Manchester, jumped on a plane, and I ended up being sat next to a guy called Jim, who used to run his own training company, kind of, and he's got at least 5 years more experience than me, but he's actually kind of 4 years younger. So he's kind of been there
right,
and done that, but younger. And he was with his stag do group as well. And me and him just chatted shop for this entire
hit it
flight,
off.
kind of all the way over to Seville. But you never know when you're going to
Yeah,
meet somebody who can provide you with insights and recommendations that you never even thought about. I think that was maybe 3, 4 years ago now, and I still chat to Jim, go for dinner with him, go for a beer with him when I'm in London. And you kind of just maintain that particular relationship. So I suppose
amazing.
two things: kind of reach out and contact people because it's within your
Yeah.
kind of network in the right way, but then
Mm.
also kind of be ready because you might meet someone who you can just connect with. You never know who sat next to you on a plane to Seville when you're
Yeah.
3 Heinekens deep. You just
Yeah,
never know.
it's typically when we do our best business, Paul, I have to say.
Networking.
And yeah, exactly, or 3 Heinekens deep. But I think in terms of, you know, there's obviously a lot of books that talk about leadership, and one of the ones I particularly, it's not just about leadership, it's about companies and different things. About it's like good to great. But if you think about that in the kind of leadership context, have you got? Could you give us like three maybe examples, like tactical examples of what you think people could do to going from being a good leader or a good manager, and what they think is a good manager,
Yeah.
to becoming a great manager or a great leader over time?
Oh wow. So there's a phrase which isn't my phrase. If you look at kind of pedestal facilitators, people that you kind of almost like aspire up to, there's a Glaswegian lady called Kirsty Mack, who I thought I knew what I was doing. And I saw Kirsty Mack deliver. And I was like, shit, I don't know my shit. I need to I need to upskill kind of super fast. She has a phrase which is don't get people to buy into what you're doing. Kind of look for ways to get them built into what you're doing. So built in, not bought in, is the example she
Mhm.
talks about. Because she talks about buying as a transaction. People often, when they're bought into something, will do it when you are watching them. But people who are built in will do it regardless of when they're watching kind of or not. So I know we've both got kids. I am built into my relationship with my daughter as you are to your son. So for regardless of whether Christina or Donna is watching us, we're just being the best dad that we can be, regardless of whether they're kind of there or not. We don't turn it on because also I'm being watched, therefore I try and be the best dad. We're built in, not kind
Yeah,
of bought in. So look for ways to work with your team to get them built in rather than kind of bought in. I think
interesting.
understanding people's motivation and why they come to work is particularly important because as you navigate and grow the business through different kind of periods of kind of change, you've got to take them on that kind of, and I hate the word, that journey, but understanding how that kind of company journey aligns to their personal kind of journey is really important. So for some of the people we work with, work-life balance is really important, having a bit of flexibility kind of in time. So for me, scheduling kind of calls in at kind of 5 o'clock isn't going to work for those people because they're going to be kind of spending time with their families. That's kind
Mm.
of what's most
Yeah,
important. I'll look to reschedule as I need to. um I think the kind of the so if we look at kind of built in versus bought in, understanding kind of people's motivators, I think the reality is when it comes to different businesses, you kind of as in that leadership role, you create the culture. So what
mm.
you do kind of gets magnified. So if
Yeah,
you're particularly negative on something, as you go through, it will magnify kind of with your team. If you do something much more
yeah,
positive, it should magnify kind of through your team. So everything you do, I think we mentioned this before, has consequences, more positive
yeah.
or kind of more negative. It's been really aware of if I do this long term, it may have a short term gain, but it could create a long term culture problem
Yeah,
as a leader.
brilliant. Look, Paul, thank you very much for your time, mate. As always, it's a real joy. Genuinely, like we've got since the very first time we met and then went for beers. We've always got on really really well,
Yeah.
and I think it's funny actually because I think we're both actually. I hope you don't mind saying this, but I think we're both pretty intense, driven, hungry leaders and business people. And I think that's obviously why we got on so well. Obviously, I wish you nothing but success with Penguin. Where can people go to kind of learn a bit more about Penguin? And obviously, we hugely recommend you guys. We use you guys, so absolutely recommend if you're looking for some training and development support, definitely hit Paul up or Phil up. He's cracking brother. So again, obviously on LinkedIn. But where else can we learn more about you?
Yeah, website kind of penguinlearning.co.uk. Kind of be the kind of first point of contact. I'm really kind of I'm not as active as I could be kind of on LinkedIn. Phil's particularly kind of active as well. So just find myself. It can be Phil Nolan, Paul Nolan. It can also you can look at some of the kind of Maisie Hessian as well, kind of a core member of our team, and also kind of Natalie Adams as well, who's our kind of head of management and leadership. So we're all quite active kind of on LinkedIn. So yeah, love to connect, even if it's just to have an informal coffee and put the world to rights in the world of L&D and learning and development, or have something a bit more kind of commercial, have an understanding of your particular kind of business needs and some problems you've got kind of with first line managers. We love